Hey guys and girls, hope you are all doing well. On this video I'm going to be reviewing the pilot episode of HBO's new version of Perry Mason, and the first episode is called just Chapter 1. So this is like a modern reboot of the original, I want to say it was 1970s, 1980s, something like that, crime series. Perry Mason famously is a lawyer, and yeah, quite a popular series from back in the day, whenever it was. Now, I go into this quite sort of fresh, really, because I don't know much about the original series. I'm not sure I've even seen like a whole episode, but I've seen bits and pieces, and he's quite a familiar sort of face, and it's certainly quite a well-known sort of figure and character. And I've certainly seen enough, and I've heard enough to get a feel for what sort of show Perry Mason was, the original, and that is, and it was quite typical of the time. So pretty much all the episodes were standalone case of the week, so you had a different case each week. It was a more light-hearted sort of show, although I think Perry Mason as a character, and I'm only assuming this, but I think he fits into that Columbo type mould, probably, where he is this very sort of grounded, streetwise sort of investigator, where he is very sort of street smart and wise. So something quite endearing about the character in that way. Again, that's my impressions. I know very little about the original series, and as soon as I heard then HBO were going to do like a reboot of it, I was sort of in. I was intrigued anyway, because you know from the start then with HBO it's going to be something a lot more gritty, a lot more dark, obviously more stylish, cinematic, because back in the day the show, for good or for bad, I'm not necessarily passing judgment on it, but obviously the production and the look of it was very standard for what network TV was at that time. And we're now in this brand new era when many of these HBO type shows, they look as good as films, really. And that's certainly something you can say about this opening episode of this reboot. And I noticed you've got Tim Van Patten, who's involved in this episode. I think he writes it. And I'm pretty sure he worked on Sopranos. I think he was one of the big writers and directors from Sopranos. So obviously he has a past on HBO. I might be misremembering that, but I think that's where I've seen his name from. So if he's going to be kind of heavily involved in this, I think that's a promising sign. But also the casting for this, I think it was maybe the casting which had me like really intrigued. So you have Matthew Rhys, whom I think most people will know from The Americans, the Cold War spy drama, which, from those of you who saw I think it was top 20 shows of the last decade, I think you'll know I'm a really big fan of that show. It was one of my favourite shows of the last 10 years. It's absolutely outstanding. I recently sort of really only finished it for the first time, watched it all the way through, but it has a tremendous season finale and pays everything off, and tremendous. I think it's one of the great recent shows. But in any case, most people know him from that. He's popped up in one or two films as well. He was in A Beautiful Day in the Neighbourhood recently, but he's a really talented, versatile, and charismatic actor. So he plays the lead, Perry Mason. You also have John Lithgow in here. You also have Tatiana Maslany, who people know as the lead from Orphan Black. So really, that's another one of my, again, that popped up in that video. That's another one of my favourite shows of recent years. Tremendous sci-fi show, and she's incredible in it. So I'm excited to see her in this once again. Anything she's in, I'm kind of down for checking out. Same with Matthew Rhys. So, and there were a bunch of other actors who I sort of recognised in there as well. So it's a pretty tight cast from top to bottom. And what they're basically doing with this is it's essentially almost like an origin story of Perry Mason, the character, because it starts when he's very much like starting out as a lawyer and very much taking just like the sort of low rent sort of cases. So he's not really established at all, and the case before he gets onto the main case, the sort of the case that he's working on at the start of the episode, is then he's basically been hired by someone to follow like her husband around, because she suspects then he's being cheated on, or that she's being cheated on, sorry, then he's sleeping around. So that's what Perry Mason is doing at the start, really. He's following this guy around, just waiting for him to cheat on her so that he can take pictures, and that's kind of the whole deal. So it's very much the beginnings of Perry Mason before he becomes this really successful lawyer. And obviously, one of the things they're going to do, which is different from the original show, is you are going to have it be more serialized and have more of an arc. So just to give you a plot overview of the episode and the season moving forward, is then the opening scene, which obviously isn't really a spoiler, but the opening scene is that you have this couple, and they're obviously like a rich couple, and their baby has been kidnapped, and there's this whole thing where they're talking to like the kidnappers over the phone, and they've sort of arranged like a swap, like money for them returning the child. And the kind of twist in the tale is, and they've left the money for the kidnappers, but when they get the baby back, the child has died, basically. Tragically, it's like a really young baby, like only 1 or something like that. And that's kind of the way the episode opens. So that's going to become the case for the season, which Perry Mason is going to investigate. So again, very serialized, whereas in the original TV show, it was a case per episode. This time it's going to be one case. I mean, I'm assuming, I don't know for sure, the case could get wrapped up in a couple of episodes. I'm not too sure, but I'm assuming this is going to be stretched out over this first season. And obviously they're building like his origin story. So he has a very modest sort of background. He has like, well, he owns like a farm because that was left to him by his parents, who are no longer around. But there's a whole dispute with that. But he has, very sort of humble sort of beginnings. And I should also say that the era, because this is set in the 1930s, and it's at the time of the Great Depression and stuff. So very interesting. It has this very sort of noirish feel to it, and so we're obviously going to build to more like the Perry Mason, or certainly as being the successful Perry Mason that obviously fans of the original series should know. So that's the setup, and I thought this was really strong, this first episode. I really liked a lot of the things it was doing, a lot of the ways it updated it, and a lot of the style. I think the period was just captured really well. I think noir is just one of my favourite sort of looks for like a genre anyway. And I just think the whole lighting and the style and the mood of this really captured me and sort of hooked me into the world. So I think top class production. I think there can be no complaints about this. Matthew Rhys is perfect casting as Perry Mason, or as this take of Perry Mason, which again I'm assuming is very different from the original version. And I think what's so good about it is this is a very much more cynical, kind of downtrodden like take on the character. It's a lot more, yeah, very sort of deadpan delivery. And I think what's good about Matthew Rhys as an actor, like, and the reason he was so good in The Americans is I think he's very good, very sort of like grounded and kind of serious and dramatic, but he can also do a lot of things. I think it would be easy just to say, yeah, he's really deadpan, he's really sort of gruff and very serious, but maybe not a lot else. But that would be doing him a disservice, because he does have a really strong personality. He does have a very he has charisma to go with it. I think it's just the fact that he is very understated, and he kind of knows how to build like a performance over the course of, I guess, with TV, multiple episodes. So I think, as well as being just this perfectly like noirish, like gumshoe type, chiseled sort of character, I think also there is like a mercurial mercurial, I should say, sort of like presence. There is like this sort of charisma that occasionally comes out and is a bit more playful, a bit more sly. It's almost like he's sort of winking a bit at the audience at times. Because in The Americans, because he was this spy, and at times he took on many different like personas, because he was obviously on different sort of cases and or different sort of missions doing different things. Then you did actually see this real range with him when he got to play this sort of thing. So I think because of that, he's definitely perfectly cast for the role of Perry Mason. And as I said, it's a strong cast supporting him. And I think one of the interesting things about setting it in the 30s, the Depression era, and all that, is then you can draw some comparison to some of the stuff going on now, or maybe stuff which is potentially going on or starting, because I think we live in an age where, again, the gulf between like the rich and the poor, it just seems to be going up. You know, the gap seems to be getting more wider all the time, and we've now reached that kind of breaking point where there has to be some sort of change, and there has to be something, just has to happen to the system to make it more fairer. We've kind of reached that breaking point now where it's just at such a serious sort of stage, then something has to happen. So I think there's an interesting idea of setting this new Perry Mason in the 30s in this sort of thing, because at various points it does look very sort of stylish. It does look very sort of glamorous, because one of, if not the last scene of the episode, is kind of at this kind of like, because it's New Year's Eve. It's one of the, it's not quite the last scene, but it's New Year's Eve and they're at like this swanky sort of like party type thing. And I'll talk more about that when I get there, but there is this whole thing where you're getting like this seedy kind of dark underside, which is set to the backdrop of all this glam and all these fireworks and New Year's Eve like coming in. So I think, yeah, that there is something in there about just, yeah, maybe contrasting the culture we now live in, or it feels like we might be living in or moving into, with kind of, because of course with the effects of this whole lockdown and the virus, we are looking at, ironically, the worst secession since the 30s, but just to draw the link there. But yeah, I think there is something very appealing about this take on Perry Mason as this kind of, this sort of cynical, everyday sort of guy. And maybe they could do some cool stuff with that, where because he has that worldview, he could become this more crooked sort of character who I think ultimately you're going to root for, or I mean, you need to root for, I think, up to a point for the series to work, but where he is going to bend the rules and potentially break them to kind of get his way and to solve things, but he's maybe doing it from a good standpoint. He is doing it for the right reasons. He is doing it for the sort of good guys. But yeah, I think there's ideas about, this is a corrupt world. This is the system's broke. So why don't I sort of work and kind of, play with it myself and just twist it for good purposes, if you like. There's ideas in there, because I don't think, I mean, to say this isn't that much of a spoiler, but at one point, because the couple go to Perry Mason and they go through him through the John Lithgow character, who's like an established lawyer who works with him to get him cases, but they go with him and they kind of said, well, we don't trust the police, would you, sort of thing. So I think that's getting a little bit at the ideas of what I'm saying. So I really like the tone and the mood and the fact that it is a more kind of cynical sort of mood, but I also like that there are lighter moments as well. I think one way it's sort of staying true to the original is then there are light touches in there. There was quite a few moments that I laughed in the episode as well, so it's good to have that. I thought it was pretty strong overall, the sort of first episode. And I think I kind of see the Matthew Rhys and his take on Perry Mason as this almost machine-like sort of force, where he kind of, if he needs to, and if the situation gets desperate enough, he can take it up to this other gear just out of nowhere. He just like sort of turns it on, and yeah, he's got a very murky background. Because at the start of the series, as I said, he's in like this legal dispute where they're trying to kick him off his own land, the land that was handed to him by his sort of parents. So I think you feel this is a character who is very rebellious, who maybe has some justification of being like pissed with the system and wanting to like subvert it, and I think again, to go to the themes we see throughout the episode, then the system is kind of like twisted and broke. I think I only really have two sort of complaints. I think one is that I think sometimes with this being a HBO show, it sort of felt like it was maybe just at times turning it up too far with like, because there are a couple of like really gory scenes. There's one particularly near the end, and not that I can't like that stuff or enjoy it. It's just I think maybe it just played that up a bit too much. It just went for the guts, so to speak, a bit too much. And hey, this is the edgy HBO take on Perry Mason. I think maybe it sort of hit that bell a bit too hard. And I think the only other sort of problem was then, because there's also another example of that, because Perry Mason has this girlfriend and we see them together, and we don't get much of a sense of her character, but you get the impression that she's very supportive of him and seems like a character we could potentially like. But there's kind of this comedic sex scene with them where they're sort of going at it from different angles, and it's when they finally climax, he kind of ends up on the floor, sort of thing. But I think just stuff like that, it's maybe showing that HBO edge, maybe a bit too much, even though that's sort of quite a funny scene. But the only other thing is I did think the opening was a little melodramatic with the couple, and when it's revealed that the baby's actually dead, just the reaction to that I thought was a little bit heightened. But I think certain scenes in the show might be heightened because it's going to have this very kind of stylish noir type thing, which I'm sort of down with. But just one or two things. Overall, I thought it was a really strong first episode, and I'm really looking forward to seeing more. So just talking a little bit about some of the things in the episode, and we do see some of the comedy come into play quite early on. So I'm going to be talking about spoilers now, just to warn you. If you've not seen this first episode and you want to turn off the video now, maybe come back later. I'm going to be talking about spoilers from here out. So the whole thing with him and the following the guy around, which again plays into some of like the cynical sort of thing, there's a lot of swearing because him and like his partner is kind of talking. The word dick comes up a lot, and he's kind of like, I'm just waiting for this guy to stick his dick into someone. But it actually leads to quite a grotesque sort of comic type thing, and it's where he finally catches the guy. And it has a nice payoff because at one point they go to a movie theatre. They follow the guy because he's going to see a movie, and it's one of these classic sort of like silent era comedies or something along that line. I wasn't quite sure what the film was, but everyone's like laughing in the audience and having a good time, and kind of gruff Perry Mason isn't. He's because like his partner's having like a grand old time, and he's kind of like, I just don't understand what they find so funny. But that kind of comes up because they eventually catch this guy, and it's this really grotesque sort of scene. And I didn't know if this was like intentionally heightened, because not to be crude, but it's kind of a really big sort of guy, and he's having sex with this glamorous girl, but it's really grotesque because it's like food's involved, and the whole thing. And he gets the pictures, and it does turn into a more comedic scene because the guy then chases him as he's like running away with the camera and chases him down the road. And what I like about the end of that scene is that Perry Mason, as they're driving away, actually cracks up and says, "Look at him," and is laughing. So I think that is a nice little payoff to the fact that the previous scene in the movie theatre, he's been really gruff and not laughing at stuff, but we actually see him like loosen up a bit when he gets to have a laugh at the guy's expense. But there's an interesting twist because when he goes to like the people who have hired him, it's not the people who hired him, but he goes to this film studio executive, because there's this whole twist where the whole scandal isn't actually the guy who's having sex, it's the woman he's having sex with, and that's because she's a famous movie star, and there's a shot of her on the poster behind like the exec. So it is the one who's hired him, actually. I should get that right. But originally they were talking like 200, but because Perry Mason now has this dirt on them, he tries to get them to like raise it to like 500. And it's this whole awkward thing where he's obviously blackmailing the guy, and originally it looks like he's going to get his way, but there's this darker twist at the end of the episode, and the tables are turned on Perry Mason at the end, because he meets up with like this very seedy like studio executive, and they basically put the heavy on him, and they, because he's going along to collect the money thinking, hey, I've got a nice little payday here, and basically it turns very sort of nasty, and they basically like give him just the 200. I wasn't quite sure because they said the 200, but then they took some expenses, so I think he ended up with very little. But they beat him up as well, and this whole scene was really effective because he then staggers out into like the club, the place where they're having like this New Year's Eve sort of bash, and there's stuff happening on stage. And he then has to tell his partner that, hey, this is all we've got. But yeah, there's this really brutal sort of interesting twist there where you actually get this seedy sort of executive and this sleazy sort of darker side to Hollywood. So I wonder if we're going to see more of that stuff with those characters, and how this is going to play into like the mythology of Perry Mason, because it's sort of built on at the end of the episode, because one of the police officers who we've seen in the episode, we've seen Perry Mason like interact with as he's obviously trying to investigate this case. He actually turns out to be corrupt, because we see him at the end with like a group of villains. So he's having dealing with villains, and this is like the really violent scene I was talking about, where he actually like kills all of them, and it's the last guy because like when he's trying to finish him off with the gun, it's like not quite working or something, and he has to sort of do it quite quickly because I think someone's coming, so he literally like crushes his throat, and it's really, really sort of violent and sort of like stomach churning. But anyway, it's again, I think, showing this kind of corrupt sort of society, and that essentially like the police cannot be trusted in this world. So it does a good job in that, and I am interested in seeing more of that side of the whole story. But yeah, there are some good comedy beats as well. Like the John Lithgow has a couple of good lines. Because when he's talking to Perry Mason in the first scene on the farm, he kind of says, "Yeah, you know, your parents left you this place, and then you've got plates on their bed." So I thought that was quite a funny line. I also like the payoff because the whole thing with Mason is then he's kind of slumming it, so he's got like really bad sort of quality suits, and he's got like a court appearance like early in the episode, but he's got like a stain on his tie, and there's this sort of gag with when he's like talking to like the exec guy where he says, hey, you know, you've got like whatever it is, he says, like that stain on your tie. And he says, yeah, turns out it's mustard. Which I quite like that sort of stuff. Obviously, the investigation stuff, you don't get that much in this episode. I think at one point Perry Mason gets a potential lead that he sort of passes on to the police, says, hey, you should maybe check this stuff out. And another touch I like about the character is the fact that he's always got his camera on him. He's always like, so when they go over to like interview the couple, that he is there taking pictures. He's in the background, and one of the big things that comes up is then they're very religious, particularly the girl. And Perry Mason actually, I keep saying his whole name, but anyway, Mason gets her on board and actually has a conversation with her, sort of relates to her on a level because he himself has got a kid that we find out he doesn't live with, but because at first I wondered if it was a tactic just to get her on board because we obviously hadn't seen him with a child, but we find out later on he was telling the truth. But anyway, he kind of gets her to open up a bit because they both have children, or obviously she had a child, tragically died. But yeah, I think later on he's kind of portraying it as this is a bit suspicious, the way they're reacting to this. Her reaction to losing her son doesn't seem very natural. So he's kind of presenting the possibility that they might have been in on it. And the Lithgow character is kind of, he's very firmly like disagrees. He says, no, that was grief we saw. But in any case, he's being encouraged, that being Mason, not to pursue that line of thinking. They're sort of saying, well, no, you've got to, they're the client, so they're paying us, so you've got to just go with it and get the job done, really, not question the client, just look for the kill sort of thing. But so that's the whole thing, and it's going to be interesting to see how the religious angle like creeps up and what part that plays in the case. So, but that's pretty much the episode. I think I've covered most of the main points. Obviously, the case it's very slow burning, and the final visual is because he's sort of drunk at one point and very drunken and just having a bad sort of time in general, and you get, I guess, the sort of like standard visual of him like laying out all the pieces of the case on the floor, and that's kind of how we end, and that's sort of the setup for the case moving forward. But as I said, I think mostly I really like this episode. I think it's a promising start, and it looks like it's going to be an intriguing new take on the thing. Now, what's interesting is I watched it with my mum, and she remembers obviously the older series more than I do, and she wasn't so keen on this first episode, and I think that was mostly because she has those memories of the first season, and or the original series, and just how much they've changed that. So I think that's a block for her, but she did say she may well get more into this. But that's interesting to think about, because obviously I don't have those issues. But so far so good. I think I did like this first episode, with one or two concerns, but obviously perfect casting, Matthew Rhys, and I like what he's doing so far. So I will return next week with episode 2 of Perry Mason. Please let me know your thoughts in the comments below. What did you think of this opening episode? What sort of direction do you expect it to take from here? I'm especially interested to hear from you if you originally saw the original series, and what you think of this and the original series. Were you a fan back in the day? How do you think this new version's shaping up? But as I said, I'll be back next week around about the same time with a review of episode 2 of Perry Mason. But thanks for listening, and I'll see you guys again soon. Goodbye.